The beer splashed across her jacket in slow motion. Laughter erupted like gunfire. In a Navy bar called Iron Tide, a decorated SEAL just made the worst mistake of his career, humiliating the wrong woman. She didn't flinch, didn't curse, just wiped the spill with hands too steady for a civilian. When he grabbed her wrist, his fingers found a scar that shouldn't exist. The room fell silent when she moved. One heartbeat. His face met the bar. 2 words would later empty that room. Viper 1. The operator who died saving 14 lives was serving drinks water at the counter. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The smell hit Mara first. Salt, diesel, and stale beer mixed with cologne that cost more than her shift pay. Iron Tide wasn't the kind of place you wandered into by accident. Anchored 2 blocks from the naval base in Virginia Beach, it wore its reputation like a challenge. SEALs, Raiders, Force Recon. The walls were decorated with patches, photos, and the kind of silence that came after too many funerals. Mara Vance pushed through the door at 11:47 p.m., still wearing her scrubs under a weathered leather jacket. 14 hours in the ER. 3 gunshot wounds. 1 kid who didn't make it. Her hands still smelled like antiseptic under the gloves she'd finally peeled off in the parking lot. She just wanted water and 20 minutes of not being needed. The bartender, thick neck, forearms like bridge cables, eyes that had seen things, looked up from polishing a glass. He took in the scrubs, the dark circles, the way she moved like someone conserving energy for the next crisis. Water, Mara said, sliding onto a stool at the far end. Tall glass, ice. He nodded once. No questions. In a town full of people who couldn't talk about their jobs, that was respect. The bar was half full. Tuesday night. Most of the crowd clustered around a pool table where someone was running the rack with mechanical precision. Mara recognized the type. Mid-30s, fit but not gym fit, hands that knew violence the way hers knew scalpels. They all had that look. Present but scanning. Relaxed but ready. She'd seen it in mirrors once upon a time. The water arrived. Mara wrapped both hands around it, letting the cold seep through her palms. Her phone buzzed. Another text from her landlord about the leak. She thumbed it away. Tomorrow. Everything was tomorrow. You lost, sweetheart? The voice came from her right. Mara didn't turn immediately. Bad habit from another life, always checking exits first. 3 men had shifted from the pool table. The speaker stood closest. 6'2", blonde, trident pin visible on his jacket. His smile was friendly in the way predators smile before they show teeth. No, Mara said. Not lost. Iron Tide's kind of a locals spot. He gestured around with his beer. You know, for the community. She took a sip of water. Ice cracked against her teeth. I'm local. Yeah? His smile widened. What unit? The other 2 laughed. One was filming on his phone already. Mara could feel eyes turning. The bartender's hand slowed on the glass. This was a test. This was theater. She'd walked into someone's entertainment for the night. I work at Centera, she said. Emergency department. A nurse. He said it like she'd admitted to being lost. That's nice. Real noble. But this bar... He leaned closer. Mara caught whiskey and arrogance. This is kind of for warriors, you know? People who've actually been downrange. Mara set her glass down carefully. Condensation pooled on the scarred wood. I understand. Do you? His tone shifted, harder now. The performance was warming up. Because you walked in here like you owned the place. Scrubs and tired eyes. We've all had long days, honey. That doesn't make you special. Someone near the pool table called out, Easy, Crenshaw. But Crenshaw was locked in now. He had an audience. Mara could see the pattern forming, the same pattern she'd seen in high school parking lots, in overseas bars, in places where insecure men needed to prove something. I didn't say I was special, Mara replied quietly. I said I wanted water. And now you got it. Crenshaw straightened. So maybe you should take it to go. Before... He reached for her glass. His fingers never made it. Mara's hand moved, not fast, not aggressive, just precise. She trapped his wrist, rotated it outward, and applied pressure to the radius nerve cluster. Crenshaw's face went white. His knees buckled slightly. "Don't," Mara said softly. "Touch my drink." She released him. Crenshaw jerked back, cradling his wrist. The room had gone quiet. Phones were out now, multiple angles. Mara could feel the shift. She just made it worse. You didn't embarrass someone like this in front of his tribe, not without consequences. "What the hell was that?" Crenshaw's voice climbed. "You think you know some mall dojo bullshit?" Mara turned back to her water. "I think you should leave me alone." "No." He stepped closer, crowding her space. "I think you just made a big mistake, sweetheart. You want to play tough? Let's see how tough." The bartender spoke up. "Crenshaw, stand down." "She started it, Ray. She's drinking water and minding her business." "She grabbed me." Mara felt the spiral. She'd been in enough bars, enough tense rooms to know how this went. Pride was combustible. Add alcohol and witnesses, and someone always got burned. She should leave. Clock out of this situation the way she clocked out of the ER. Clean hands. Walk away. Let tomorrow be tomorrow. But Crenshaw's hand landed on her shoulder. Mara moved, not thinking, not planning, just moving. She trapped the hand, stood, pivoted inside his reach, and drove her shoulder into his center mass while sweeping his lead leg. Crenshaw went down hard, not violent, not showy, just mechanical. By the time his back hit the floor, Mara had his arm locked at an angle that made resistance agony. "Tap," she said. "What?" "Tap out or I dislocate your shoulder." His free hand slapped the floor twice. Mara released him and sat back down. Her water hadn't spilled. She took another sip while Crenshaw scrambled to his feet, face crimson, breathing hard. "You—" "She just dumped your ass, Crenshaw," someone shouted from the pool table. Laughter exploded, phones tilted for better angles. "Shut up!" Crenshaw spun, then back to Mara. "Who the hell are you?" "A nurse," Mara said, "who had a long shift and wants to drink water in peace." A man emerged from the crowd, older, maybe 50, salt and pepper beard, eyes like flint. He wore no patches, no identifiers, but everyone gave him space. "Show us again," he said. Mara glanced up. "Excuse me?" "That takedown. Show us how you did it." "I'd rather not." "I'm not asking as a request." His voice carried command weight. "You just humiliated one of my guys using joint manipulation and leverage that looks a lot like CQC doctrine, in a bar full of people who know what that means. So either you're someone we should know, or you're stolen valor waiting to happen." Mara's pulse didn't change, but her hands went still on the glass. Stolen valor. The accusation that ended careers, destroyed reputations, got people blacklisted. "I'm neither," she said. "I'm just trying to drink water." "Then you won't mind showing us where you learned that." The circle was tightening. Mara counted exits, front door, kitchen, bathroom window if she was desperate. 12 men between her and the easiest path. More on their phones. This was being recorded, uploaded, sent to group chats and feeds. If she ran, they'd assume guilt. If she stayed, they'd want proof. She was so goddamn tired. "Fine," Mara said. "One demonstration, then I'm done." The older man, Mara caught someone calling him Chief Voss, gestured to Crenshaw. "Again. Slower this time." Crenshaw looked ready to object, but Voss's expression killed the argument. He approached Mara like she might explode. His hand touched her shoulder, tentative this time. Mara walked through it, trap, pivot, sweep, control. Slow enough to see, fast enough to prove it wasn't luck. When Crenshaw was on the ground again, she showed them the pressure point on his arm, the angle of control, the way she used his momentum against him. "CQB fundamentals," someone muttered, modified for smaller frame. "Where'd you train?" Voss asked. "I didn't." "Bullshit. Nobody moves like that without training." Mara released Crenshaw and stood. Her jacket shifted, revealing the edge of a scar along her collarbone. Circular, deliberate, like a burn that had been stitched. Voss saw it. His eyes narrowed. "I watched videos," Mara said. "Practiced. Got good at protecting myself." "What videos?" "YouTube, Reddit, whatever I could find." The room erupted in laughter. Someone yelled, "She learned that from YouTube!" The phones caught it all. But Voss wasn't laughing, neither was the bartender. Neither were a handful of older men along the wall, veterans who'd been quietly watching, reading the spaces between words. "Show us your hands," Voss said. Mara hesitated. "Your hands. If you learned from videos, your hands will be soft, unmarked." She extended them slowly, palms up. Under the bar lights, they looked like any nurse's hands, clean, capable, a few small scars from IVs and broken glass. Voss turned them over. His thumb traced the calluses at the base of her fingers, the wear patterns on her knuckles, the faint discoloration on her dominant hand where bone had been broken and healed poorly. "These aren't YouTube hands," he said quietly. "I rock climb," Mara lied. "Weekends." "Where?" "Wherever there are rocks." More laughter. But it was thinner now, uncertain. A few people were lowering their phones, squinting at Mara like she'd come into focus wrong. Crenshaw, back on his feet and furious, grabbed a pistol from behind the bar, a training dummy, blue-painted and inert. "Fine. You know CQC? Field strip this, 60 seconds. He slammed it on the counter. Mara looked at it. Glock 19, standard issue. She'd stripped 1,000 of them in the dark, in the rain, under fire. Muscle memory that lived deeper than thought. "I don't think 60 seconds or admit you're full of shit." The bar held its breath. Mara picked up the pistol. She didn't count, didn't think. Her hands just moved. Magazine out, slide lock, barrel free, spring released, frame cleared, pieces lined up in perfect order, then reassembly. Smooth, mechanical, no hesitation. Slide racked. Function check. 41 seconds. The room went dead silent. Voss picked up the pistol, checked it, set it down. "Most people fumble the spring." "I've seen it done," Mara said. "One-handed?" Mara's throat tightened. She'd used her offhand without thinking. Old habit. When your primary hand is shattered and bleeding, you learn to make the left hand dominant. "Lucky," she said. "No." Voss stepped closer. "Trained. Where?" "I told you. And I'm telling you that's a lie. You don't move like a civilian. You don't react like someone who learned this from a screen. Every man in this bar has been trained to recognize threats. And right now, you're lighting up like a goddamn Christmas tree." Mara felt the walls closing. This was the moment, the decision point. She could keep lying, keep deflecting, until they either believed her or threw her out. Or she could give them something real. But real meant questions. Real meant recognition. Real meant going back to a life she'd burned to ashes. "I need to leave," Mara said. "Not yet." Voss's hand caught her wrist, not rough, but firm. His fingers brushed the circular scar. He froze. "What is this?" "A burn, from work." "This isn't a burn." His voice dropped. "This is an extraction mark. From a Field 4, combat medic." Mara pulled free. "You're wrong." "Then tell me your call sign." The air left the room. Call signs weren't something civilians had. They weren't given in basic training or stamped on dog tags. They were earned in blood, in moments too classified for after-action reports, in places that didn't exist on maps. "I don't have one," Mara said. "Everyone has one. If you were trained." "Then I wasn't trained." Voss studied her face. "You know what I think? I think you walked in here hoping to disappear, have a quiet drink, stay invisible. But you just showed us skills that don't come from nowhere. And now you're trapped, because every phone in this bar caught it. So you've got two choices. Tell us who you are, or walk out of here while we make assumptions and spread them online." Mara's hands curled into fists. She could feel it, the old self trying to surface. The operator who'd survived 18 months in places that killed better people. The woman who'd dragged wounded through gunfire while her own blood painted the ground. "I'm nobody," she said. "Try again. I'm a nurse who wants to be left alone. One more time. And this time, tell the truth." The door behind them opened. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of rain. A man entered, tall, graying, wearing civilian clothes that didn't hide the soldier underneath. He scanned the room, eyes landing on Mara. His face went white. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. Voss turned. You know her, Colonel? The man, Colonel, apparently, stared at Mara like she'd risen from a grave. That's not possible. What's not possible? She's dead. She died in Syria. 2015. The whole unit. He stopped, visibly shaken. What the hell is this? Mara stood slowly, her chair scraped against the floor, loud in the pressing silence. Every eye in the bar was on her now. Every phone. Every question. I think, she said carefully, there's been a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? The colonel moved closer, stopped 3 feet away like approaching a ghost. You're Viper 1. You're the operator who held Sector 7 for 11 hours while we evacuated civilians. You took 3 rounds and kept fighting. His voice cracked. We buried an empty casket. The file is sealed. How are you here? Viper 1. The name hit the room like a flashbang. Phones dropped. Beer bottles froze mid-lift. Someone's glass slipped from numb fingers and shattered on the floor, the sound impossibly loud. The retired chief by the wall, the one who'd been silent all night, slowly got to his feet. His face had gone gray. That's not possible. Viper 1 is KIA. Officially. Officially, Mara said quietly. I am. Then who the hell are you? She met his eyes, saw the recognition dawning, saw the moment he connected the scars, the calluses, the way she'd moved with lethal economy. I'm the person who survived, Mara said, and chose not to come back. The bar erupted. Questions flew like shrapnel. How? Where? Why? Who authorized? Men surged forward, desperate for answers, for confirmation, for proof that one of their legends hadn't been erased by paperwork and lies. But Voss raised one hand, and the room fell silent. Viper 1, he said slowly, testing the name. The operator who saved 14 civilians when her entire team was wiped out, who was extracted 3 days later, barely alive, who supposedly died in transport. Mara said nothing. The story I heard, Voss continued, was that she held ground against enemy fighters for 11 hours. No resupply, no air support, just training, ammunition, and a refusal to let anyone else die. They found her with 3 bullet wounds, shrapnel in both legs, and still maintaining a defensive perimeter around civilians too wounded to move. That's the story, Mara confirmed. And you're saying it's true? I'm saying I was there. Someone near the back, a younger SEAL, maybe 25, spoke up shakily. Viper 1 is, you're a legend. They tell your story in training. They use you as an example of holding ground when extraction isn't coming. They shouldn't, Mara said. Why not? Because I didn't hold ground for glory. I held it because running meant watching children die. That's not heroic. That's just math. The room absorbed this. The phones were still recording, but the energy had shifted from confrontation to something else. Reverence mixed with confusion, respect tangled with disbelief. Crenshaw, who'd been silent since his second takedown, cleared his throat. If you're really Viper 1, prove it. Tell us something only she would know. Mara considered him. Like what? The extract code. The one used for that operation. Broken Arrow. Anyone could Google that. The secondary rally point was a burned-out school 3 clicks northeast. The walls were yellow. Someone had painted flowers on the door. I counted them while waiting for evac. 17 flowers, purple and red. Voss's expression confirmed it. That was never in reports. Because it didn't matter tactically, but I remember it anyway. What else? Mara closed her eyes briefly. The memories were there, waiting, always waiting. The first civilian I pulled to cover was a girl, maybe 9. She had a leg wound and kept asking for her brother. I told her he was fine. I lied. He'd been killed in the initial strike. I kept lying for 11 hours because she needed to believe she had something to survive for. Did she make it? Someone asked quietly. Yes. Medevac to Germany. Last I heard, she was living in Michigan, studying engineering. You kept track? I kept track of all 14. It's the only thing I brought back from that op. The silence was different now, heavy with understanding. They'd all lost people. They'd all lied to keep someone fighting. They'd all carried names longer than they carried medals. Voss sat down slowly on a bar stool. Why didn't you come back? Because Viper 1 is dead, Mara said, and she needed to stay dead. Why? Because coming back meant more ops, more sectors, more children I'd have to lie to. I was already breaking. I just hadn't admitted it yet. She looked around the room. The military offered me a medical discharge. New identity, clean slate. I took it, became a nurse, learned to save people without having to kill anyone in the process. But you kept the training. I kept the scars. The training just came with them. The colonel, who'd been standing frozen, finally moved. He approached Mara slowly, hands visible, respectful. I was the CO for that operation. I signed the report. I attended your funeral. I know. His voice failed. I need to ask you something. Go ahead. When we finally got to you, when the bird landed and the medic reached you first, do you remember what you said? Mara's jaw tightened. Yes. Tell me. She met his eyes. I said, are they safe? You told me yes. I said, then I'm done. And I meant it. The colonel's face crumpled. Tears cut through years of stone. You didn't even ask about your injuries, about the team, just whether the civilians made it. The team was already gone. The civilians were all I had left to protect. He nodded slowly, wiped his eyes, stepped back. I'm sorry we buried you, but I'm glad you survived. Mara didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. The bartender, Ray, had been silent through all of this. Now he poured a shot of whiskey and set it in front of Mara. On the house, for Viper 1. I don't drink anymore. Then for Mara Vance, the nurse who patches people instead of putting them down. She almost smiled at that. Almost. Thank you. The crowd was dispersing slowly, the tension bleeding out into something softer, understanding maybe, or just exhaustion from carrying the weight of revelation. Phones were lowered. Apologies murmured toward Mara, who nodded and accepted them without making it easier. Crenshaw approached last. His earlier arrogance had been sandblasted away. I'm sorry, I had no idea. You weren't supposed to. Still, I came at you like someone who wanted to protect his space. I get it, this is your bar, your community. I invaded it. You belong here more than most of us. Mara shook her head. I don't belong anywhere anymore. That's kind of the point. He nodded, started to leave, then turned back. For what it's worth, the way you dropped me, twice, that was clean, professional. You could have hurt me. You didn't. Hurting people is why I left. She watched him rejoin his group, saw the conversation shift, saw them looking at her differently now. Not as a target, not as an outsider, as something else, something they didn't have words for yet. Voss approached with two other men, both older, both carrying themselves with the quiet authority of people who'd made decisions in rooms without windows. We need to talk, Voss said. Not here, somewhere private. It's not a debriefing. It's not an interrogation. It's just, he struggled for words. There are people who need to know you're alive. People who've been carrying your death for 10 years. Mara considered this. And if I say no, then we respect that, but we're asking. She looked at the three men, saw sincerity, saw grief that hadn't healed, saw the same thing she saw in mirrors, survivors who'd outlived their own stories. One conversation, Mara said, then I'm done. Fair enough. They moved to a back room, quiet, secure, away from phones and crowd. Mara sat with her back to the wall, old habit. The three men sat across from her like a tribunal, but their faces held no judgment. The file says you died in transport, the first man said. Voss introduced him as retired Master Chief Ellis. Heart failure from blood loss. We were told recovery was impossible. Recovery was impossible, Mara agreed. For who I was before. That person died on the table. I came back as someone else. Why the deception? Because the military needed closure. The team needed a hero. I needed to disappear. Everyone got what they needed. Except the truth. Mara leaned forward. The truth is that I spent 11 hours in hell watching good people die. I kept 14 civilians alive and lost 6 teammates doing it. When they pulled me out, I was broken, physically, mentally, all the ways that matter. The medics patched my body, but there wasn't enough of me left to go back out. So they offered me an exit. I took it. And now I patch other people, save lives without a rifle, sleep without seeing their faces every night. She paused. Most nights. Ellis studied her. You don't regret it? Walking away? Every day. And never. Mara met his gaze. I regret the people I couldn't save. I regret not being faster, smarter, better, but I don't regret choosing to live differently, to stop being a weapon. The third man spoke. Voss had called him Commander Price. The civilians you saved, you said you kept track? All 14, where they are, what they're doing. Mara hesitated. It's how I know it mattered. They know you're alive? God, no. They think I died saving them. Let them keep thinking that. It's cleaner. Is it? Mara didn't answer. Price leaned back. We lost good people in that operation. The team leader, Hayes, the medic, Ortiz, 4 others. You were the only one who made it out. I know their names, Mara said quietly. I'll always know their names. They'd be proud of what you became. They'd be alive if I'd been better. You held ground for 11 hours against a force that outnumbered you 15-1. No air support. Injured. Protecting civilians who couldn't fight back. That's not failure. Mara's hands clenched. It felt like failure. It still does. The room sat with that truth for a long moment. Finally, Voss spoke. Why come to Irontide? Tonight, specifically. I didn't plan it. I just finished a shift. Wanted water. Didn't realize where I was until I was already inside. Bad luck? Or good luck? Depending on how you look at it. Voss almost smiled. You could have walked out when Crenshaw started pushing. I could have, should have. But you didn't. No. Why? Mara thought about that. About the ER. About spending 14 hours trying to save people who'd hurt themselves, hurt others, been hurt by life. About the kid who died on her table because the knife hit his heart and there was nothing she could do except hold pressure and watch him slip away. Because I'm tired, she admitted. Tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of pretending I'm not what I am. And what are you? Broken, but still fighting. The 3 men exchanged looks, some silent communication that came from years of operating together. Ellis spoke first. You know this is going to spread. The videos. The story. Viper 1, alive and working as a nurse. It's going to blow up. I know. Your cover's gone. I know. So what's your plan? Mara laughed, dry, humorless. I don't have one. I haven't had a plan since the day I walked away. I just wake up, go to work, try to save more people than I lose. That's it. That's enough, Price said quietly. Is it? For some of us, it has to be. The conversation wound down slowly. They gave Mara numbers, secure lines, encrypted apps, ways to reach them if she needed help or just wanted to talk. She accepted them knowing she'd probably never use them. But it felt good anyway. Connection without obligation. Respect without demand. When they finally left the back room, the bar had mostly cleared. A few stragglers remained, veterans too old or too curious to leave. They nodded to Mara as she passed. Some saluted. She didn't return them. That wasn't her anymore. Ray, the bartender, was wiping down the counter. He looked up as Mara approached. On the house, he said, gesturing to her untouched water. And for the record, you're welcome here, anytime. Even after tonight? Especially after tonight. This bar's for warriors. You're one of them, whether you want to be or not. Mara pulled out cash anyway, left it on the counter. For the entertainment. You call that entertainment? I call it expensive. She headed for the door. Cold air and rain waited outside. Her car was parked 3 blocks away. She'd walk slowly, let the rain wash away the bar smell, the memories, the weight of being seen, but her phone buzzed before she made it 5 steps. Unknown number. Encrypted prefix. Mara's stomach dropped. She answered. Yes? Viper 1? The voice was young, female, shaking. Who is this? My name is Amira Nassar. You saved my life in Syria 10 years ago. I was 9. The world tilted. Mara's hand found the wall. Amira? Yes, The girl, woman now, was crying. I'm sorry. I know you're supposed to be dead. I know I shouldn't have found you, but I didn't know who else to call. How did you get this number? I've been tracking you for years. I needed to know if the woman who lied to me, who told me my brother was okay when he wasn't, I needed to know if you survived. And you did. And now I need your help. Amira, I can't. They have my daughter. The words punched through Mara's chest like shrapnel. What? My daughter. Layla. She's 8. I took her back to Syria to visit family, and Amira's voice broke. The same people. The same group that killed my brother. They took her. They're demanding ransom. They're going to execute her in 72 hours if I don't pay. And I don't have the money. I don't have anything except the memory of the woman who saved me when no one else could. Mara closed her eyes, saw the little girl with the leg wound, saw 17 purple and red flowers painted on a yellow door, saw a life she'd saved becoming a life that needed saving again. Where are you? Mara asked. Michigan. But Layla's in Syria. Near where you found me. Amira, I'm not that person anymore. I can't. Please. The word carried 10 years of weight. You told me my brother was fine. You lied to keep me alive. I'm asking you to save my daughter the same way. Please. Mara's hands were shaking. The rain was coming harder now, soaking through her jacket, her scrubs, her skin. She was standing outside a bar full of people who'd just seen through every wall she'd built. She should say no. She should hang up. She should go back to being Mara Vance, ER nurse, survivor, ghost. But Amira was crying. And somewhere in Syria, an 8-year-old girl was counting flowers on a door, waiting for someone to lie and tell her everything would be okay. Give me the details, Mara said. Everything. You'll help. I didn't say that. I said give me the details. Amira sent them in a burst. Names, locations, ransom demands. Photos of Layla that made Mara's chest ache. The child had her mother's eyes. The same eyes that had looked up at Mara a decade ago, trusting, terrified, believing the lie. Mara hung up, stared at her phone, at the information that could destroy the quiet life she'd built. Then she turned and walked back into Irontide. The remaining veterans looked up. Voss was still there, talking quietly with Ellis and Price. I need your help, Mara said. They stood immediately. What happened? One of the civilians I saved. Her daughter's been taken. Syria. Same area. Same group. When? 72 hours until execution. The 3 men didn't hesitate. Didn't question. Didn't ask if she was sure. What do you need? Voss asked. Intelligence, transport, equipment, and people who aren't afraid to step outside official channels. You're talking about an unauthorized rescue op in hostile territory. Yes. Based on information from a distraught mother who might be working on bad intel. Yes. Against a group that's been operating in that region for over a decade. Yes. Voss looked at Ellis and Price. Some silent conversation passed between them. Then all 3 nodded. When do we leave? Ellis asked. Mara felt something crack inside her chest, something she'd kept sealed for 10 years. Relief, terror, purpose. 48 hours, she said. We'll need that time to plan. Viper 1's back, Price said quietly. No. Mara met his eyes. Viper 1 is dead, but Mara Vance is done running. The rain hammered the windows. Somewhere a child was counting flowers, and for the first time in a decade, Mara Vance, broken, exhausted, hollowed out, felt something that wasn't just survival. She felt ready. The safe house smelled like old coffee and gun oil. Located in a strip mall basement 40 minutes from Irontide, it had been a recruiting office once, then a storage unit, then forgotten. Now it served as a waypoint for operations that didn't exist on paper. Mara stood at a metal table covered in satellite imagery, her scrubs traded for tactical pants and a plain black shirt. The transformation had taken 15 minutes. The mentality shift had taken less. Some things lived in muscle memory deeper than identity. Voss spread additional photos across the table. This is Al-Rashid, the compound where they're holding the girl. Former military installation, abandoned after the Civil War, repurposed by the same militia that operated in your sector back in 2015. They call themselves Al-Nusra Jadida now, Ellis added, pulling up encrypted files on a laptop. New Dawn Front. Same leadership, same tactics, just rebranded after international pressure. Mara studied the compound layout. 3 buildings, guard towers, single access road. Security? Rotating patrols, 12 to 15 fighters at any given time. Heavier weapons than last decade, RPGs, heavy machine guns. Chinese drones for perimeter surveillance. Air support? None we can use officially. This is off book. What about Syrian government forces? They ignore al-Rashid, unofficial arrangement. The militia doesn't target government positions, government doesn't clear them out. Mara traced the compound perimeter with one finger. Extraction options? Price joined them, carrying equipment cases. Helicopter would announce us from 20 miles out, ground transport only, which means we drive in, get the girl, drive out before they mobilize a response. That's not a plan. That's suicide. You got a better idea? Mara didn't, not yet. She pulled up the surveillance photos, grainy shots taken from commercial satellites, dated within the last 72 hours. The compound looked exactly like 100 others she'd seen. Functional, fortified, built to withstand anything except precision and speed. How current is this intel? She asked. 48 hours. Best we can get without tipping our hand. And the girl? Confirmation she's actually there? Ellis turned the laptop screen. A video file played. Low quality, clearly shot on a phone. A small girl sat against a concrete wall, hands bound, eyes wide with terror. A voice off camera spoke in Arabic, listing demands. The girl never spoke, just stared at the lens like she was trying to memorize it. Mara's jaw tightened. When was this sent? 12 hours ago to Amira Nassar's email, along with wire transfer instructions and a deadline. Can she pay? The ransom's $2 million. She's a graduate student. She has maybe $15,000 in savings. So they know she can't pay. Which means this isn't about money, Voss said quietly. It's about making an example, terrorizing the diaspora community, showing them that coming back, even for family visits, means risk. Mara watched the video loop. The girl's eyes, the way her shoulders curled inward, the small, involuntary flinch when the voice grew louder. She looks like her mother, Mara said. You remember? I remember all of them. The room fell quiet. Outside, traffic hummed past the strip mall. Normal people doing normal things. Grocery shopping, picking up dry cleaning, living lives that didn't include watching children held hostage half a world away. Ellis broke the silence. We need to talk logistics, insertion, equipment, timeline. But first we need to talk about command structure. Mara looked up. Meaning? Meaning you're the only one here who's operated in that specific region, who knows the terrain, the enemy tactics, the civilian dynamics. But you've been out for a decade. The rest of us are active or recent retired. So who's running this op? The question hung in the air like smoke. Mara set down the photo. I'm not qualified to lead this. Why not? Because I'm a nurse, not an operator. Not anymore. Your hands say different, Price observed. The way you moved in that bar, the way you're reading these photos right now, you're already planning angles of approach, fields of fire, contingencies. Muscle memory doesn't make me qualified. Then what does? Mara met his gaze. Nothing. Because I'm broken. I walked away because I couldn't handle one more op, one more decision that got someone killed. You want to put me in charge? You're asking me to make the same choices that destroyed me the first time. Voss leaned against the table. I was in Fallujah. Second battle. Lost half my platoon in 4 days. Came home. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't function. Took me 3 years to put myself back together. Then 9/11 happened again. Different city. Same fear. And you know what I realized? What? Being broken doesn't mean being useless. It means understanding the cost, which makes you more careful, more precise, more willing to abort when the mission goes sideways. He gestured at the photos. We need someone who knows the cost, not someone who thinks they're invincible. Mara looked at the three men. Ellis, Master Chief, 30 years in, 3 Purple Hearts still carrying shrapnel in his hip. Price, Commander, Black Ops background, the kind of experience that didn't make it into service records. Voss, the quiet authority that came from leading men through hell and bringing most of them home. If I do this, Mara said slowly, I'm not Viper 1. I'm not the operator from the legend. I'm someone who's terrified of failing, of watching another child die because I wasn't good enough. That's exactly who we need, Ellis said. You might regret that. We've regretted plenty. One more won't kill us. Mara almost smiled. Almost. Okay, but we do this my way. Minimal footprint, surgical precision. We get in, get the girl, get out. No heroics, no standing ground if it goes wrong. We abort and replan rather than push through bad odds. Agreed. And if I say it's not viable, if the intel doesn't support success, we don't go. No arguments. The 3 men exchanged glances. Price nodded first. Your call? Then let's start planning. They worked through the night, satellite imagery, patrol patterns, building layouts, equipment lists. Mara's hands moved across maps with the precision of a surgeon marking incisions. She identified weaknesses in the compound's defenses, blind spots in the guard towers, gaps in the patrol schedule, a drainage culvert that ran under the eastern wall. Here, she said, tapping the culvert. If it hasn't been collapsed or sealed, infantry won't think of it as an access point because it's too small for vehicles. But for 4 people moving light, it opens inside the compound? Price asked. Should, if the construction matches the other installations in that region. These were Soviet-era builds, standard design. They put drainage systems everywhere because the spring floods turn everything to mud. That's a lot of ifs. Welcome to combat planning. Ellis pulled up construction schematics, decades old, partially degraded, but readable. You're right, culvert runs from the wadi north of the compound straight under the eastern perimeter. Exits near what looks like a maintenance shed. Guard presence? Unknown, but maintenance areas are usually low priority. Storage, repairs, nothing valuable. Mara studied the layout. We'd need to breach during shift change, maximum confusion. Patrols rotating, guards distracted, command structure temporarily fragmented. When's the next shift change? If they're running standard 8-hour rotations, we're looking at 0600, 1400, and 2200 local time. Which one? 2200. Late enough that fatigue's setting in, dark enough for concealment, early enough that we can be wheels up by midnight if it goes clean. Voss checked his watch. That gives us 36 hours to get there, prep, and execute. Assuming we can get there. We can get there. How? Price smiled, thin, dangerous. You don't want to know the details. Just trust that we have access to transport that doesn't require flight manifests or customs declarations. Black budget? Blacker than black. Mara decided not to push. Some operational security existed for good reasons. What about equipment? Already staged, small arms, nods, comm gear, medical supplies. We travel light but prepared. No heavy weapons? Nothing we can't carry and conceal. This isn't an assault. It's a snatch and grab. Mara nodded. The terminology alone brought back memories, briefings in tents, maps illuminated by red flashlights, the smell of desert dust and nervous sweat. She'd hated these moments, the waiting before action, the knowing that everything depended on plans built from incomplete information and calculated guesses. What about exfil? She asked. Vehicle staged 15 clicks south, off-road capable. Once we're mobile, we cross into Jordan. Friendly border, no questions. 15 clicks is a long way if we're hot. You have a shorter option? She didn't. 15 kilometers of hostile territory with a traumatized child and potential pursuit was nightmare fuel, but it was still better than trying to hold ground and wait for air support that would never come. Fine, Mara said, but we need contingencies. What if the girl's not in the main compound? What if she's been moved? We have a local asset, someone who's been feeding us information. They'll confirm her location before we breach. How reliable is this asset? reliable enough to risk our lives on. Mara didn't like it. Every operation lived or died on intelligence quality. But they were working with what they had. Perfect information was a fantasy. You planned for likely scenarios and adapted when reality proved different. I want communication protocols locked down, she said. Radio discipline, code words, emergency abort signals. We don't use names in the field. We don't discuss operational details on open channels. Standard procedure. And medical. If someone gets hit, we stabilize and move. No heroic efforts. No staying behind to save the wounded. We all move or we all abort. The room went quiet at that. The unspoken rule, never leave a man behind, hung in the air like accusation. I've seen what happens when people try to save everyone, Mara continued. The math doesn't work. You end up with more casualties, not fewer. So if it comes down to losing one person or losing everyone, we choose survival. Even if that person is you? Voss asked. Especially if it's me. Ellis shook his head. That's not how we operate. Then you're operating on emotion instead of logic, which gets people killed. So does abandoning teammates. I'm not talking about abandoning anyone. I'm talking about accepting reality. If someone takes a headshot and goes down, they're gone. Stopping to recover a body while under fire just creates more bodies. We move. We survive. We grieve later. The three men looked at each other. Mara could see the conflict. Training versus instinct, doctrine versus experience. Finally, Price spoke. What happened in Syria? The op that killed your team? Mara's hand stilled on the map. That's not relevant. It is if it's affecting your judgment. My judgment is the only thing keeping this plan from being a suicide mission. Then help us understand. Mara wanted to refuse, wanted to keep that door closed, but they were about to walk into hell together. They deserved to know why she was building the plan the way she was. We were ambushed, she said quietly. En route to extract civilians, IED disabled our lead vehicle. Sniper fire from elevated positions. We were pinned in a kill zone with nowhere to go. Team leader called for us to push through. Aggressive maneuver, break contact, regroup at the rally point. What happened? 3 people died pushing through that kill zone, including the team leader. The rest of us were pinned down with 14 civilians who couldn't move fast enough to evacuate, so we held ground for 11 hours until extraction finally arrived. You saved the civilians. I lost 6 teammates doing it because we didn't abort when we should have. Because the mission became about proving we could win instead of recognizing we'd already lost. The room absorbed this. That's what you're trying to prevent, Voss said. Yes. By being willing to walk away if it goes wrong. Exactly. Ellis rubbed his face. Okay, I get it, but we're still not leaving anyone behind unless there's literally no choice. That's non-negotiable. Fine. But when I say abort, we abort. No debate, no second guessing. Agreed. They continued planning. Mara walked them through entry procedures, room clearing tactics, hostage handling protocols. Her voice was steady, but her hands betrayed her. Small tremors when she wasn't actively using them. Voss noticed, said nothing, just slid a water bottle across the table. Drink. You look dehydrated. Mara drank. The water was cold, clean, normal. It felt wrong somehow, like the world should taste different when you were planning an operation that could end with children in body bags. Tell me about Amira, Price said suddenly. What about her? You said you remember all 14 civilians. What do you remember about her specifically? Mara set down the bottle. She was 9. Shrapnel wound in her left leg. Kept asking for her brother. I lied and told her he was fine. Kept lying for hours because the truth would have broken her. When we finally got her to the bird, she was still asking, still believing. And now her daughter's in the same situation. Yes, that's got to be eating at you. It was, like acid, like watching a nightmare loop back on itself. Mara had saved Amira so she could grow up, build a life, have children, and now that child was trapped in the same hell that had nearly killed her mother. It doesn't matter what's eating at me, Mara said. What matters is getting that girl out alive. Does Amira know you're going after her? I told her I'd try. She doesn't know details. Safer that way. What if we fail? Mara met his eyes. Then I'll have to tell a mother I failed twice. Once to save her brother, once to save her daughter. That's not on you. It will be. The planning continued until dawn broke through the basement windows, gray light filtering through security bars, illuminating maps marked with highlighter and grease pencil. Mara's vision blurred from exhaustion, but she kept working. Sleep could wait. Sleep could always wait. We need to move in 12 hours, Voss announced. Transport leaves from a private airfield outside Richmond. Flight time to Jordan is 14 hours with refueling. That puts us on the ground with 6 hours to prep before the 2,200 window. Tight, Ellis observed. It's what we have. Mara studied the timeline. Everything depended on precision. One delay, one complication, and the whole schedule collapsed. What about gear? Already packed. Weapons, nods, comm equipment, medical supplies. We'll kit up on the plane. I'll need to review the medical supplies. Why? Because I'm a trauma nurse. If someone gets hit, I'm the best chance they have, but only if I have the right equipment. Price nodded. Fair point. I'll send you the inventory. The list arrived on Mara's phone minutes later. She scanned it quickly. Tourniquets, pressure bandages, quick clot, chest seals, IV supplies, pain management. Comprehensive, but generic. She added items, pediatric airway equipment, smaller IV catheters, child-sized blood pressure cuffs. Why the pediatric gear, Ellis asked, looking over her shoulder. Because we're rescuing an 8-year-old. If she's injured, adult equipment won't work properly. Airway sizes are different. Medication doses are different. We need to be prepared for that. You think she'll be injured? I think we should plan for worst case. The room fell quiet again. No one wanted to imagine an 8-year-old girl wounded, bleeding, dying in their arms. But operational planning meant confronting every nightmare scenario. What else? Voss asked. Translator, does anyone speak Arabic? Basic phrases, enough to communicate. I need better than basic. If we're trying to calm a traumatized child who's been held hostage, I need to speak her language, literally and figuratively. You don't speak Arabic? Enough to get by, not enough to comfort a scared kid. Price pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke quietly for 2 minutes, hung up. We'll have someone at the airfield, former interpreter, worked with SF teams for 6 years. He'll join us. Vetted? Thoroughly. Mara nodded. One more variable. One more person who could succeed or fail, help or hinder, but necessary. They spent the next hour going over contingencies. What if scenarios that multiplied like cancer cells? What if the girl wasn't there? What if she was too injured to move? What if the militia had reinforced security? What if the drainage culvert was blocked? For every question, Mara forced herself to answer. Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. Abort conditions. Rally points. Emergency extraction procedures. It was exhausting, mind-numbing, necessary. Finally, Voss called a halt. We need rest. 4 hours minimum. We can't operate on zero sleep. I don't sleep well, Mara said. Neither do any of us. But we try anyway. They dispersed to different corners of the safe house. Cots had been set up, military surplus, uncomfortable but functional. Mara lay down fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. Her body was exhausted. Her mind raced. She thought about Amira, about the little girl with the leg wound who'd trusted Mara's lies, about how that girl had grown into a woman, a mother, someone trying to build a life from the ashes of war. And now her daughter, named Layla, like the night, was counting hours in a concrete cell. Mara's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Thank you for trying. Amira. Somehow she'd gotten Mara's number, or maybe Price had shared it. Either way, the message landed like a punch. Mara typed back, yes, don't thank me yet. I already lost my brother. I can't lose my daughter. I know. Do you? Really? Mara stared at the question. Did she know? She'd never had children, never had family beyond the teams, never had someone she'd created and carried and loved with the desperate intensity that mothers described. But she'd held dying children, had lied to them about survival, had watched their eyes go empty while promising everything would be okay. I know enough, Mara typed. Amira's response came immediately. She has a stuffed rabbit, pink, named Basil, like the herb. She sleeps with it every night. She'll be asking for it. Mara closed her eyes. Details like that destroyed you, made the mission personal instead of professional, made failure unbearable. I'll tell her Basil is waiting, Mara typed. Promise? Yes. It was a lie. Mara had no idea if she'd ever get close enough to that girl to say anything. But sometimes lies were all you had to give. She set the phone down, closed her eyes, tried to find sleep in the spaces between heartbeats. It didn't come. Instead, memories came. Syria. The heat. The dust. The sound of gunfire echoing off concrete walls. A little girl asking about her brother. Mara's voice steady and false. He's fine. He's waiting for you. The girl had believed her. They always believed. Mara rolled onto her side. The cot creaked. Somewhere in the safe house, someone was snoring. Someone else was moving. Footsteps, water running, the small sounds of people trying to prepare for violence. She should sleep. 4 hours wasn't much, but it was something. The mission would demand everything she had. She needed to be sharp. But sleep meant dreams, and dreams meant reliving the moments when everything went wrong. So Mara lay there, eyes open, watching shadows move across the ceiling, counting the hours until they left for the airfield. 72 hours until execution, Amira had said. They were down to 54 now. The clock was running, the girl was waiting, and Mara, broken, terrified, rebuilt into something resembling human, was about to walk back into the nightmare that had killed her the first time. She wondered if she'd survive it twice. She wondered if survival even mattered, as long as the girl made it out. The ceiling offered no answers. Just cracks in the plaster, patterns that looked like maps if you stared long enough. Territories of fear and obligation spreading out like borders on a war chart. Mara memorized them all. Then she got up, unable to bear the waiting anymore, and went back to the planning table where Ellis was still working. Can't sleep? He asked. Never could. Not before ops. Bad habit. Keeps me alive. Ellis smiled, tired, understanding. You want coffee? Please. He poured 2 cups from an ancient machine. The coffee was terrible. Mara drank it anyway. What are you working on? She asked. Patrol timing, trying to find patterns. The surveillance shows guards rotating, but the intervals aren't consistent. Mara leaned over the data. Could be intentional. Variable timing makes patterns harder to predict. Or it could be poor discipline. Either way, it complicates entry. Everything complicates entry. They worked in silence, comparing timestamps, looking for gaps. Small windows where security thinned, where attention drifted, where human error created opportunity. Here, Mara said finally, 2147 to 2203. 16-minute window where patrols overlap on the western side. Eastern perimeter is minimally covered. That's our entry point. If the pattern holds, it will. You sound certain. Ellis shrugged. I've learned to trust operational luck. When you find a weakness, you exploit it before the universe closes it. That's not luck, that's gambling. Same thing, different name. Mara didn't argue with Ellis about luck versus gambling. She just went back to studying the patrol patterns until the numbers blurred into meaningless data. At some point, Voss appeared with breakfast, protein bars and more terrible coffee. They ate standing up, too wired to sit. The safe house filled slowly as morning turned to afternoon. New faces appeared. The translator, a compact man named Kareem who moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd survived too many close calls. A logistics coordinator who never gave his name. A driver who looked too young to be involved in black ops, but carried himself like he'd seen worse than anyone in the room. Wheels up in 4 hours, Voss announced. Final gear check, comm systems test. Then we're gone. Mara changed into tactical gear that fit better than it should have. Someone had guessed her sizes correctly. Black fatigues, plate carrier, drop holster. She strapped on the equipment with movements that felt like archaeology, uncovering a person she'd buried. The weapons came next. Voss handed her a suppressed M4 and a Sig Sauer P226. Both well-maintained, broken in, reliable. Mara checked the rifle's action, cleared it, functions tested the suppressor. Muscle memory. Her hands knew these rituals better than her mind did. You good? Price asked, watching her work. I'm operational. That's not what I asked. Mara looked up. I'm terrified, but I'm operational anyway. Good enough. They ran communications checks, radio discipline, call signs. They'd agreed on a system. Mara was lead, Voss was 2, Ellis was 3, Price was 4, Kareem was shadow. Simple. Clean. Easy to track in the chaos. The plane wasn't what Mara expected. A modified cargo aircraft, military surplus painted civilian colors. The interior had been stripped and reconfigured. Bench seating, cargo netting, equipment racks. It looked like 1,000 other flights she'd taken into bad places. Comfortable? Ellis asked, strapping in beside her. Nostalgic. That good or bad? Both. The flight was long, 14 hours of engine noise and recycled air. Mara tried to sleep and failed. Instead, she reviewed the mission parameters again, memorized the compound layout, went through medical protocols in her head, pediatric trauma, shock management, field stabilization. Kareem sat across from her, eyes closed but clearly not sleeping. Mara studied him, the scars on his hands, the way he held tension in his shoulders. Someone who'd been in the shit. Someone who understood cost. You worked with SF teams? She asked. His eyes opened. 6 years. Helmand province mostly. Some ops in Syria. Ever worked civilian rescue? Once. Village elder's daughter, taken by Taliban. We got her back. Alive? Yes. Good. Kareem studied her face. You're the one they call Viper 1. It wasn't a question. I was. I heard stories. The operator who held Sector 7 saved 14 civilians against impossible odds. The stories are exaggerated. Are they? He leaned forward slightly. I was in Syria when it happened. Different sector, but word travels. They said you were dead. KIA in transport. But here you are. Here I am. Why'd you come back? Mara looked at him. Because one of those 14 civilians had a daughter, and now that daughter needs saving. Kareem nodded slowly. Full circle. Something like that. The girl, Layla. You know anything about her? She's 8, like stuffed rabbits, probably terrified. She'll be more than terrified. She'll be traumatized, possibly injured, definitely not trusting anyone in tactical gear. That's why you're here. To translate? To bridge. You speak her language, literally and culturally. When we get her, she's going to need someone who understands what she's experiencing. Someone who can tell her she's safe in words that actually mean something. Kareem was quiet for a moment. What if she's not safe? What if extraction goes wrong? Then we lie convincingly. He almost smiled. I can do that. The plane refueled in the Azores. They didn't disembark, just sat in the cargo bay while fuel trucks did their work. Mara watched through a small window as ground crew moved around. Normal people. Normal jobs. No idea that the aircraft they were servicing carried operators heading into hostile territory. Price appeared beside her. You should eat. Not hungry. Eat anyway. It's going to be a long night. She forced down an MRE. The food tasted like cardboard and regret. Her stomach protested but accepted it. Fuel was fuel. Tell me about the local asset, Mara said, the one providing intel. Former militia member, defected 6 months ago, been feeding us information ever since. Why'd he defect? The militia executed his brother for stealing food, decided he was done being loyal to people who murder over bread. How reliable? He's been right about everything so far. Patrol schedules, guard rotations, weapons inventory. No reason to doubt him now. Except that people lie when they're scared, or when they're being paid by multiple sides. Price nodded. True, which is why we verify everything we can independently. But at some point, you have to trust someone, or you end up walking into ambushes. You really don't trust anyone, do you? Mara looked at him. I trust competence. I trust training. I trust people to act according to their interests. Everything else is faith, and faith gets you killed. That's bleak. That's survival. The plane descended into Jordan as sunset painted the sky orange and red. They landed at a private airfield. No tower, no customs, Just a single runway and a hangar that had seen better decades. A vehicle-weighted, beaten Toyota pickup with local plates. Low profile, Voss explained. We're just contractors heading to an inspection site. They loaded gear into the truck bed, covered it with tarps. Mara climbed into the back with Ellis and Kareem. The air was cooling rapidly. Desert nights where heat bled away the moment the sun dropped. The drive took 3 hours. Rough roads. No conversation. Mara watched the landscape pass. Rocky terrain, sparse vegetation, the occasional village glowing with generator lights. This was the borderland. The space between nations where rules got flexible and survival meant keeping your head down. They stopped 15 kilometers from the Syrian border. A safe house waited, mud brick walls, corrugated metal roof, built to look like a dozen other structures in the area. Inside, more equipment, fresh intel, satellite photos taken 12 hours ago. The girls confirmed in Building 2, Price said, pointing to the compound layout. Second floor, northwest corner. Our assets saw her this morning during a guard shift change. Mara studied the building. 2 stories. Concrete block construction. Small windows with bars. Access points? Main entrance, heavily guarded. Service entrance on the east side, lighter security. Windows are barred but could be breached with bolt cutters. What about interior layout? Best guess, hallway running the length of the building, rooms on both sides. The girls in a locked room, probably former storage or office space. Guards inside the building? 2 confirmed, 1 at the main entrance, 1 patrolling the hallway. That's light. They're not expecting rescue, they're expecting ransom payment or execution. Mara traced the route with her finger. We breach through the drainage culvert here, move to the service entrance. Eliminate or bypass the interior guards. Get to the second floor. Extract the girl. Exit the same way we came in. That's the plan. What about the other buildings? Building 1 is barracks. Sleeping quarters for the militia. Building 3 is command and logistics. We avoid both unless absolutely necessary. And if we make contact? We move to Plan B, aggressive breakout, suppress resistance, extract to the vehicle, cross the border. What's Plan C? Voss looked at her. There is no Plan C. Either we get out clean or we fight our way out dirty. No middle ground. Mara nodded. Binary outcomes. Success or chaos. The way most operations ended. They synchronized watches, checked equipment one final time. Mara went through her medical kit. Every item accounted for, organized for quick access. The pediatric airway equipment sat at the top. She hoped she wouldn't need it, knew she probably would. How's your Arabic? She asked Kareem. Fluent. Syrian dialect specifically. Good. You'll do initial contact with the girl. Tell her we're there to take her home. Tell her mother sent us. Use the rabbit's name, Basil. It'll help her trust us. Understood. And if she panics, I keep talking, keep reassuring, give her something to focus on besides the fear. Have you done this before? Once. The elder's daughter I mentioned. She was so scared she couldn't walk. I had to carry her the whole way out. Layla might be the same. Then I'll carry her. The sun finished setting. Stars emerged, bright and cold and indifferent. Mara stood outside the safe house, breathing desert air, trying to calm the adrenaline that was already flooding her system. Ellis joined her. You ready? No? Good. Means you're taking it seriously. I'm terrified we're going to get that girl killed. We might, but we'll get her killed faster by not trying. Mara knew he was right. Doing nothing meant execution. Trying meant risk. Between certain death and possible survival, there was no real choice. Let's go, she said. They loaded into the truck again. The driver, still unnamed, took them north. No headlights. Night vision only. The landscape was barely visible, just shapes and shadows against stars. They parked 3 kilometers from the compound. Walked the rest. 4 operators plus Kareem moving in tactical formation through terrain that wanted to break ankles. Mara's body remembered this. The weight of gear, the rhythm of patrol movement, the constant scanning for threats. The drainage culvert appeared exactly where the map said it would. A concrete tube, maybe 4 feet in diameter, partially blocked with debris. Ellis cleared it quietly while Voss covered their approach. No visible patrols, no lights, just darkness and the distant sound of generators. Clear, Ellis whispered. They entered single file. The culvert smelled like stagnant water and decay. Mara's boots splashed through shallow puddles. Her nods turned the darkness green, grainy, distorted, but functional. The tube ran for 200 meters, felt like miles. They emerged inside the compound perimeter. The maintenance shed provided cover while they assessed the situation. Building 2 was 50 meters away. Lights burned in second-floor windows. Shadows moved behind glass, guards doing their rounds. Mara checked her watch, 21:51 hours. The patrol gap would start in 4 minutes. "Shadow, you're on point," she whispered into her radio. 2 and 3, your breach team. 4, your rear security. I'm Overwatch and medical. Execute on my mark. They moved like smoke. Kareem reached the service entrance first. The door was locked but not reinforced. Cheap padlock, easily defeated. He had it open in seconds. Inside was a corridor, concrete walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of unwashed bodies and fear. A guard sat at a desk 20 feet away, scrolling through his phone. Kareem moved like a ghost. The guard never saw him coming. Quick chokehold. The man went limp. They zip-tied him, gagged him, dragged him into a side room. "First floor clear," Voss whispered. They found stairs. Narrow, metal, every step a potential noise violation. Mara's heart hammered against her ribs. This was the moment. The point where plans met reality and usually came apart. Second floor, another hallway, doors on both sides, most closed, one guard visible at the far end, smoking a cigarette near an open window. Mara's training took over. She signaled Ellis, flank left, Price, flank right. Kareem, center approach. She stayed back, covering their movement with her rifle. The guard turned, saw them, his mouth opened. Ellis was faster, suppressed double tap. The guard dropped without a sound. The cigarette fell, still smoldering. "Northwest corner," Mara whispered. "Go." They breached the room. The door was locked but cheap. One kick from Voss and it splintered inward. Inside, a small figure huddled in the corner. 8 years old, dark hair, eyes too big for her face. She wore dirty clothes and no shoes. Her hands were bound with zip ties. She screamed. Kareem dropped to one knee, hands visible, voice soft and urgent in Arabic. The girl kept screaming, backing into the corner like a trapped animal. "Basil," Kareem said. "Your rabbit. Basil is waiting for you." The screaming stopped. The girl stared at him, breathing hard. "Your mother sent us," Kareem continued. "Amira, she's waiting. She wants you home." "Mama?" The word was barely audible. "Yes, but we have to go now. Can you walk?" The girl nodded. Kareem cut her zip ties, lifted her gently. She was shaking so hard Mara could see it from across the room. "Lead, we have the package," Mara radioed. "X-filing now." They moved back into the hallway. The girl buried her face in Kareem's shoulder. Smart kid, not looking at the dead guard. Downstairs, through the corridor, toward the service entrance. Then the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, red bulbs that turned everything into a horror show. An alarm started wailing. Voices shouted in Arabic. Boots pounded on concrete. "Contact!" Price yelled. Gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes lit the corridor like lightning. Mara returned fire on instinct, controlled bursts, center mass, targets dropping, training overriding terror. "Move!" she screamed. "Go! Go! Go!" They pushed toward the exit. Ellis took point, clearing the path. Price covered the rear. Mara stayed with Kareem and the girl, her rifle tracking threats. A fighter appeared from a side room. Mara put 2 rounds in his chest before he could raise his weapon. He fell. She stepped over him. The service entrance was ahead. 20 feet, 15, 10. Then the door exploded inward. Reinforcements. 5 fighters. Armed with AKs and rage. They opened up, filling the corridor with lead. Voss went down. Blood sprayed. He hit the floor hard. "3 is hit!" Ellis shouted. Mara's training kicked in like a reflex. 4, suppress. 2, drag. 3, shadow. Get the package out. "I'm covering." She moved forward into the gunfire. Not thinking, just moving. Her rifle barked, suppressed rounds punching through targets. 1 fighter. 2. 3. The suppressor glowed cherry red. Price grabbed Voss by his drag handle, pulling him backward. Ellis laid down, covering fire. Kareem ran with the girl toward the drainage culvert. Mara stood in the corridor alone. 4 operators behind her. Enemies ahead. This was the moment from Syria. The moment where holding ground meant letting others escape. "Lead, fall back," Price yelled. "Negative, get them out." "We don't leave." "That's an order. Move." She heard them go, heard boots splashing through the culvert, heard the girl crying, heard Voss groaning, and still Mara stood there, firing controlled bursts, making every round count. Magazine empty. Reload. Smooth. Mechanical. Another fighter down. Another. The corridor was full of bodies now. Her radio crackled. "Lead, we're clear. Exfil now." Mara turned and ran. The drainage culvert seemed longer on the way out. Darker. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. Behind her, pursuit, shouts, gunfire, the sound of organized chaos. She emerged into open air. The truck was there, engine running. Ellis in the driver's seat. Price in the back with Voss, applying pressure to a leg wound. Kareem held the girl, who was sobbing, into his chest. Mara threw herself into the truck bed. "Drive!" Ellis floored it. Dirt and rocks sprayed. Gunfire chased them but fell short. They were moving. Away from the compound, toward the border, toward safety. Mara crawled to Voss. His leg was torn open. Bullet had severed the femoral artery. Price had a tourniquet on it, but blood was still seeping. "How bad?" Voss asked through gritted teeth. "Bad, but manageable." Mara worked fast, pressure dressing, hemostatic gauze, IV access. Her hands moved like they were separate from her mind, trained, precise, saving lives because that's what they did now. "The girl?" Voss asked. "Safe." "Good." The truck bounced over rough terrain. Mara held the IV bag high, keeping pressure on the wound site. Price monitored vital signs. Ellis drove like he was running from the devil. Kareem was talking to the girl in soft Arabic. Mara caught fragments, assurances, promises, lies that sounded like truth. The girl was responding now. Not screaming, just crying. Progress. The border appeared, just a line of rocks and a rusted fence. The truck crashed through without slowing. Jordan. Friendly territory. Safe. "We made it," Ellis said. Mara didn't respond. She was too busy keeping Voss alive. The bleeding had slowed but not stopped. He needed a hospital, real surgery, blood transfusions. "There's a medical facility 20 clicks south," Price said, reading her mind. "French NGO. They'll treat him." "Will they ask questions?" "They know better." The facility appeared, a cluster of prefab buildings surrounded by sandbags. Medical staff met them at the gate, practiced and efficient. They took Voss on a stretcher. Mara gave a rapid briefing, wound type, treatment administered, current status. The doctor nodded, asked no questions, disappeared into surgery. Mara stood in the parking area, breathing hard, coming down from adrenaline. Her hands were covered in blood. Her uniform was soaked. She felt like she'd been turned inside out. Kareem approached with the girl. She was wrapped in a blanket now, holding water. Her eyes were huge, traumatized but alive. "She wants to know if her mother is really waiting," Kareem said. Mara knelt down, eye level. The girl looked at her, this blood-covered stranger who'd shot people to save her. "Your mother is waiting," Mara said in broken Arabic, "and she loves you very much." The girl nodded, reached out tentatively, touched Mara's face like confirming she was real. Then she said something in rapid Arabic. Kareem translated. "She says thank you. She says you look like an angel covered in blood." Mara's throat tightened. "Tell her angels don't shoot people. Tell her I'm just someone who keeps promises." Kareem translated. The girl managed a tiny smile. Mara stood, walked away before the emotions could crack through. She found a sink outside the medical facility, washed the blood off her hands, watched it swirl down the drain, red turning pink, turning clear. Price appeared beside her. "Voss is in surgery. Doctor says he'll make it." "Good." "The girl's being processed. French NGO will coordinate return to her mother. Should be stateside in 48 hours. "Good." "We did it, Led. Got her out. Everyone's alive." Mara turned off the water. Looked at her clean hands. They were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. We got lucky, she said. Luck, skill, same difference. No, it's not. She walked back to the truck, sat in the bed, stared at the stars that had watched the whole thing without caring. Somewhere in the medical facility, Voss was fighting for his life. Somewhere inside, a girl named Layla was learning she'd survived. Somewhere in Michigan, a mother named Amira was waiting for a call that would change everything. And Mara sat there, covered in other people's blood, feeling the weight of what she'd just done settle onto her shoulders like a familiar burden. She'd gone back. To the nightmare. To the violence. To the choices that destroyed people from the inside out. And she'd survived it. Again. Ellis climbed into the truck bed, sat beside her without speaking, just present, solid. Thank you, Mara said quietly. For what? For listening when I said to leave me, for getting them out. That's what you ordered. I know, but you did it anyway. Ellis nodded. You held ground. Again, just like Syria. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. You chose to stand between them and death. That's who you are. Mara didn't argue. She was too tired, too wrung out. She just sat there as dawn started to break over the Jordanian desert, light spreading across a landscape that had seen too much violence and somehow kept existing anyway. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Is she alive? Amira, desperate, waiting. Mara typed back, yes, coming home. Safe. The response came instantly. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mara didn't reply. Just put the phone away and watched the sun rise. She'd kept her promise. Saved the daughter like she'd saved the mother. Completed the circle. But the cost was visible in the blood on her uniform. In Voss fighting for his life. In the bodies she'd left in that corridor. Violence solved nothing. It just created more violence. An endless cycle. But sometimes, just sometimes, it also saved 8-year-old girls who liked stuffed rabbits. Mara closed her eyes, let the sun warm her face, tried to believe that was enough. The sun was fully up when the doctor emerged from surgery. Blood on his scrubs, exhaustion in his eyes. But he was smiling. Your friend will live, he said in accented English. The artery repair was successful. He'll need weeks of recovery, but he'll walk again. Mara felt something release in her chest. Can I see him? He's sedated, but yes, 5 minutes. Voss looked small on the hospital bed. IV lines running into both arms, monitors beeping steadily. His face was pale but peaceful. Mara stood at the foot of the bed, not sure what to say to an unconscious man. We got her out, she said finally. The girl, she's safe. You took a bullet so she could go home. Voss didn't respond. Just breathed, in and out, alive. Mara touched his foot through the blanket. Thank you for trusting me, for following orders when it mattered. She left before the emotions could spill over. Outside, the others were waiting. Ellis leaned against the truck, cleaning his rifle. Price was on a satellite phone, speaking in clipped sentences. Kareem sat on the ground with Layla, showing her pictures on his phone. Distractions. Anything to keep her mind off what she'd just survived. How is he? Ellis asked. Alive. Stable? Good. Ellis set down his rifle. We need to talk about what happens next. What do you mean? I mean that operation just happened, on foreign soil, without authorization. We killed multiple hostiles and extracted a civilian. That's going to create waves. Mara hadn't thought that far ahead. She'd been focused on survival, on getting everyone out alive. The political ramifications hadn't registered. What kind of waves? She asked. Price ended his call and joined them. The kind that involves inquiries, diplomatic protests, possibly charges if the wrong people start asking questions. We saved a child. Unofficially, using black budget resources, in a country where we're not supposed to be operating. The people who authorized our transport are already covering their tracks. So what are we supposed to do? Disappear. Go back to our lives. Pretend this never happened. Mara looked at Layla. The girl was laughing now at something on Kareem's phone. A child's laugh, pure and brief, and already scarred by what she'd endure. She's going home, Mara said. To her mother. That's what matters. Agreed. But we need to make sure the story stays clean. The French NGO will say they negotiated her release, paid a ransom. No mention of Americans. No mention of a rescue operation. What about the bodies we left behind? The militia will bury them quietly. Admitting they got hit by a 4-person team would be embarrassing. They'll claim internal conflict, settling scores, anything but the truth. Ellis nodded. Everyone wins, the girl goes home, the militia saves face, we disappear. Clean. But it didn't feel clean. It felt like lies built on top of violence, built on top of more lies. Mara understood the necessity. Operational security, diplomatic protection, survivor safety. But understanding didn't make it feel right. When does she leave? Mara asked, looking at Layla. 6 hours, charter flight to Frankfurt, then commercial to Detroit. Amira will meet her at the airport. I want to be there when she boards. That's not advisable. I don't care. I promised her mother I'd get her home. I'm seeing it through. Price studied her face. You're making this personal. It was always personal. He didn't argue, just nodded. Fine. But after she's on that plane, you disappear too. No contact with the family. No follow-up. This operation ends the moment she's wheels up. Understood. The 6 hours crawled past. Mara showered in a facility bathroom, scrubbing blood from under her fingernails. Changed into civilian clothes someone had provided. Jeans, t-shirt, jacket. She looked almost normal. Almost. Layla stayed close to Kareem. He'd become her anchor, the voice that spoke her language, the face that hadn't pointed a gun. Smart survival instinct. Trust the translator. Mara didn't take it personally. The French NGO coordinator arrived, a woman named Sophie who'd seen too much and stopped being surprised by anything. She processed Layla with efficient compassion. Medical check, documentation, travel arrangements. She'll need psychological support, Sophie said quietly to Mara. What she experienced, the captivity, the violence of extraction, it will stay with her. I know. Her mother should be prepared for nightmares, behavioral changes, possibly regression. I'll tell her. Sophie handed over a folder. Her medical records, vaccination updates we administered, contact information for trauma specialists in Michigan. Make sure the mother gets this. Mara took the folder. One more responsibility, one more weight. The charter flight was a small jet, corporate, unmarked, the kind that moved people who needed to stay invisible. Layla boarded with Kareem, who'd volunteered to fly with her to Frankfurt and make sure the handoff went smoothly. Before boarding, Layla turned back, looked at Mara, said something in Arabic. She wants to know your name, Kareem translated. Mara knelt down, eye level again. Tell her my name is Mara, and tell her she's the bravest person I've ever met. Kareem translated. Layla smiled, small, fragile, but real. Then she did something unexpected. She hugged Mara, quick and tight. The kind of hug that said thank you in a language beyond words. Mara's throat closed. She hugged back, careful not to squeeze too hard. Go home, little one. Your mother is waiting. Layla pulled away, climbed the stairs into the jet. Kareem followed. The door sealed. Engines spooled up. Within minutes, the plane was taxiing. Mara watched it take off. Watched it climb into a cloudless sky. Watched until it was just a speck, then nothing. She's safe now, Ellis said beside her. Is she? Or is she just safe until the next nightmare? You can't protect her from everything. I know, but I can make sure this particular nightmare is over. They drove back to the safe house in silence. Voss was being transferred to a military hospital in Germany. Better care, fewer questions. The rest of them would disperse. Back to their lives. Back to pretending this never happened. But Mara's phone kept buzzing. Messages from Amira. Is she really coming home? When will I see her? How is she? Did she ask for me? Mara answered each one. Kept it brief. Professional. Don't let it get personal, she reminded herself. Even though it was already so personal, it hurt. At the safe house, they debriefed. Not officially, there would be no written reports, no after-action reviews, just 4 people sitting around a table talking through what happened. The breach went clean, Ellis said. Timing was perfect. We had the girl in under 3 minutes. Then the lights went out, Price added. Someone triggered an alarm. The guard I shot, Mara said. He must have had a dead man switch, something that triggered when his vitals stopped. Or someone saw us on surveillance and hit the alarm manually. Either way, we had maybe 30 seconds before the compound mobilized. Lead's decision to hold the corridor gave us time to exfil, Ellis said. Without that, we'd have been overrun. Mara shook her head. I just did what needed doing. You would have done the same. Maybe, but you were the one standing in that corridor, alone. Against how many? I didn't count. 12, Price said quietly. I did count. 12 hostiles engaged, 7 confirmed kills, the others wounded or suppressed. You held that corridor for 90 seconds. That's not luck. That's skill. Mara didn't know what to say to that. 90 seconds felt like hours. Felt like Syria all over again, holding ground while others escaped, becoming the wall between survival and death. Viper 1, Ellis said. That's who you became in that corridor, not me, not Mara the nurse, Viper 1 the operator. Don't call me that. Why not? It's who you are. It's who I was. There's a difference. Is there? Price leaned forward. Because from where I stood, you transitioned from civilian to operator in about 5 seconds. No hesitation, no second guessing, just pure combat effectiveness. Mara's hands clenched. I did what I had to do. That doesn't make me Viper 1 again. Then what does it make you? Someone who can't let children die. That's all. The room absorbed this. Outside, the desert wind rattled the windows. Sand against glass. Persistent. Wearing everything down eventually. What happens now? Ellis asked. For you specifically? I go home. Back to Virginia Beach. Back to the ER. Back to being a nurse. After what just happened? After proving you're still operational? Especially after what just happened. I remembered why I left. The violence, the killing, the standing in corridors counting bodies. I don't want that life. Even if you're good at it? Being good at something doesn't mean you should do it. Price stood, walked to the window, stared out at nothing. There are people, important people, who know what happened here, who know Viper 1 isn't dead. They'll come calling. Let them call. You'll say no? I'll say what I've been saying for 10 years. I'm done. And if they don't accept that? Mara met his eyes. Then they'll learn I'm better at saying no than they are at asking. The debrief wound down. They divided up remaining equipment. Ellis took the weapons for disposal. Price handled the financial cleanup, money trails, resource allocation, covering their tracks. Mara just wanted to leave, to get on a plane and go home and forget this ever happened. But Kareem called before she could leave. We landed in Frankfurt. Layla's transferring to the Detroit flight. She wanted me to tell you something. What? She said you remind her of her mother, the way you looked at her, like you'd do anything to keep her safe. Mara's chest tightened. Tell her she's right. I would. I did. She smiled. First real smile since we got her out. Thank you for staying with her. It's my honor. She's a brave kid. She's going to be okay. I hope so. Not hope. No. She survived hell. She'll survive the aftermath too. Mara ended the call, sat there holding the phone, thinking about children who survived things that should have broken them, about mothers waiting at airports for daughters they thought they'd lost, about the lies that kept people going when the truth was unbearable. Her phone buzzed again. Not Amira this time. A blocked number. She answered cautiously. Ms. Vance? Male voice, American, authority in every syllable. Who is this? Someone who knows what you did and wants to talk about it. I don't know what you're talking about. The operation in Syria, the rescue of Layla Nassar, the fact that Viper 1 isn't actually dead. Should I continue? Mara's blood went cold. How did you get this number? I get every number when I need to. We need to meet. No. This isn't a request. Then it's a demand I'm refusing. Silence on the line, then. You saved a child. That's commendable. But you also conducted an unauthorized military operation on foreign soil. That's problematic. We need to discuss how this situation gets resolved. It's already resolved. The girl's going home. The militia thinks it was internal conflict. Everyone moves on. Not everyone. There are people who want to know if Viper 1 is available for consultation. She's not. You haven't heard the offer. Don't need to. The answer is no. Ms. Vance, it's Nurse Vance. And I'm not interested in whatever black ops, off-book, morally questionable operation you're recruiting for. I've been there. Done that, got the scars and the nightmares. I'm out. People like you don't just get out. People like me get out by walking away and never looking back, which is what I'm doing right now. Lose this number. She hung up. Blocked the number, threw the phone on the table. Ellis looked up from his gear. That sounded pleasant. Someone knows about the operation, about me. Of course they do. Operations like this don't stay secret. Too many moving parts, too many people involved. They want me back, want Viper 1 available for consultation. What did you tell them? What I always tell them, no. They won't stop asking. Then I'll keep saying no until they get the message. Price rejoined them. You should know, the operation is being reviewed at very high levels. People who matter are taking notice. Let them notice. I'm still saying no. Even if they offer resources, support, a chance to make a difference? Mara stood. I make a difference every shift at the ER. I save lives without having to take them. That's the difference I want to make. Viper 1 saved 14 lives in Syria. Just saved another one now. That's a different kind of difference. A kind that costs too much. Everything costs. Question is whether you're paying towards something that matters. Mara grabbed her bag. I'm done with this conversation. I'm going home. Fair enough. But think about what Price said. You're good at this. Not just competent. Good. People with your skills are rare. Wasting them on ER shifts seems inefficient. Being efficient at killing isn't a virtue. Being efficient at saving people is. Mara paused at the door. I save people just fine without a rifle. Do you? Or do you save the ones who make it to the ER while others die because no one with your skills was there to help them? The question hit harder than it should have. Mara thought about all the trauma patients who arrived already gone, the ones who died in ambulances or on streets because help arrived too late, the ones who needed someone with combat medical training, tactical mindset, ability to function under fire. That's not fair, she said quietly. War isn't fair. Medicine isn't fair. We work with what we have. And what I have is a life I built away from this, a life I'm keeping. Ellis nodded. Understood. But if you change your mind, I won't. She left before the argument could continue. Outside, a car was waiting, arranged by Price, probably. Driver who asked no questions. 40-minute ride to the airport. The flight home was commercial this time. Coach seating, crying babies. Normal people living normal lives. Mara sat by the window watching clouds pass below, thinking about everything that had happened in the last 72 hours. She'd gone back. To the violence, to the operator mindset, to standing in corridors making choices that saved some people and killed others. And it had worked. Layla was going home. Voss would recover. The mission succeeded, but success felt hollow. Because she could still smell the gunpowder, still see the bodies, still feel the weight of the rifle in her hands, and the certainty that came with target acquisition. That certainty terrified her more than anything else, because it meant Viper 1 wasn't dead, just sleeping, waiting for the next crisis, the next child who needed saving, the next corridor that needed holding. Her phone buzzed. Text from Karim. Layla's on the plane to Detroit, ETA 4 hours. Her mother is already at the gate. Mara typed back. Thank you for everything. Honor was mine. You're a good operator, even if you don't want to be. She stared at that message. Good operator, as if that was supposed to be a compliment, as if being efficient at violence was something to aspire to. Another text arrived. From Amira. They told me she's coming, that she's safe, that you kept your promise. Mara replied, she's brave, like her mother. Can I see you? Thank you in person? Better if you don't. Let this be the end of the story. But you saved her. I need to... You don't need to do anything except love your daughter. That's enough. A long pause. Then, I understand. But thank you. For everything. For saving me 10 years ago. For saving her now. For for being the angel covered in blood. Mara closed her eyes. Angel covered in blood. That's what Layla had called her. A child's interpretation of violence as salvation. Maybe that's all operators were. Angels covered in blood, trying to save people while wearing the cost of that salvation on their skin. The plane landed in Virginia Beach at midnight. Mara took a cab home to her tiny apartment. One bedroom, minimal furniture. The life of someone who never expected to stay anywhere permanently. She showered for the third time, trying to wash away the feeling of Syria. Changed into scrubs. Checked her work schedule. Shifts started in 8 hours. Back to the ER. Back to normal. But her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from Ellis. Safe travels, call if you need anything. From Price. The offer stands, think about it. From Voss. Somehow awake in Germany. Thank you for saving my life, and for being the commander we needed. And finally, from the blocked number she'd deleted. This isn't over, we'll talk again. Mara turned off her phone, lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of her apartment building, neighbors moving around, music bleeding through walls, the hum of traffic outside. Normal life. The life she'd chosen. The life she'd fought for. But it felt different now. Smaller somehow. Like she'd seen beyond the edges of the normal world and couldn't unsee it. Somewhere in Detroit, Amira was hugging her daughter, crying, saying prayers or promises or whatever mothers said when they got their children back from the dead. Somewhere in Germany, Voss was recovering, telling the story of the operator who held a corridor against impossible odds. Somewhere in Virginia Beach, veterans who'd seen her in that bar were spreading the word, Viper 1 is alive. And Mara lay there in the dark, wondering if she'd made a mistake, not in saving Layla. That was never in question, but in going back, in proving to herself that the operator still existed underneath the nurse's scrubs. Because now she knew. The skills hadn't faded, the instincts hadn't dulled. The certainty that came with combat effectiveness was still there, waiting, and knowing that made walking away so much harder. Her work alarm went off at 600. Mara silenced it. Got up, made coffee, went through the morning routine, drove to Centara Hospital, clocked in for her shift. The ER was chaos. 3 car accidents, 2 cardiac events, 1 gunshot wound. Mara moved through it with practiced efficiency. Triage, stabilize, save who you can, accept who you can't. A senior nurse named Patricia pulled her aside during a lull. You look different. Different how? Harder. Like you've been through something. Long weekend. Must have been some weekend. Mara didn't elaborate, just went back to work. Saved 3 lives that shift. Lost 1. A kid, 17, gunshot to the abdomen, bled out before they could get him to surgery. She stood in the trauma bay afterward, looking at the body covered with a sheet, thinking about corridors, about children, about the ones you save and the ones you lose, and the impossible calculus of deciding which is which. Patricia found her there. You okay? No, but I will be. The kid, it wasn't your fault. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. I know. Then why are you standing here? Because I'm wondering if there was something more I could have done. There wasn't. You did everything right. Mara nodded, but she kept thinking, what if I'd been there sooner? What if I'd had different equipment? What if I'd made different choices? The same questions that haunted Syria, the same impossible standards, the same crushing weight of responsibility. She finished her shift, drove home, collapsed on the couch, turned on her phone. 17 new messages. The blocked number had called 6 times, and 1 text from Amira, sent 2 hours ago. She's home. She's safe. Thank you for giving me my daughter back. Attached was a photo. Amira and Layla hugging in an airport terminal, both crying, both smiling, both alive. Mara stared at that photo for a long time, memorizing it, adding it to the collection of moments that made the cost worthwhile. Then she made a decision. She called the blocked number back. A man answered immediately. Ms. Vance, I was hoping you'd reconsider. I haven't. I'm not becoming an operator again. Then why call? Because I have conditions. If, and this is a massive if, you need consultation, medical expertise, training support, I might be available. On my terms. For situations involving civilians, children especially. But I don't deploy. I don't operate. I consult. That's the line. Silence. Then, that's acceptable. For now. And I maintain my nursing job, my civilian life. This doesn't consume me. Understood. And no lies. No black ops I don't know about. No using me for operations I haven't agreed to. Fair terms. Then we have an understanding. Call me when you need me. I'll decide if I answer. That's not how this usually works. Then find someone else. I'm done being told what to do. Another pause. Very well, we'll be in touch. Mara hung up, sat there holding the phone, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life, or the smartest decision. Time would tell. For 3 weeks, nothing happened. Mara worked her shifts, saved lives, lost some. The rhythm of the ER became her anchor again. Chaos she could manage, problems she could solve with her hands instead of a rifle. But the phone calls kept coming. Not from the blocked number, from the people who'd been in that bar, from veterans who'd spread the story, from operators who'd heard that Viper 1 was alive and wanted to shake her hand, buy her a drink, tell her what her legend had meant to them. Mara declined every invitation, kept her head down, stayed invisible, until the day Amira showed up at the hospital. Mara was finishing a double shift, 28 hours straight, 3 traumas, 1 save that shouldn't have worked but did. She was walking to her car when she heard her name. Mara? She turned. Amira stood there with Layla. The girl looked better, clean clothes, brushed hair, holding a pink stuffed rabbit, but her eyes still carried shadows. Amira, what are you doing here? We drove from Michigan. I had to see you, had to thank you properly. You already thanked me. You didn't need to. Yes, I did. Amira stepped closer. You saved my life when I was 9. You saved my daughter's life when she was 8. You're the reason we're both standing here. I needed to look you in the eye and tell you what that means. Mara's throat tightened. I was just doing what anyone would do. No, you did what almost no one would do. You went back to a place that nearly killed you. You stood in a corridor and held ground so my daughter could escape. Karim told me everything. The gunfire, the bodies, the blood. He shouldn't have. He thought I needed to understand the cost, and I do. Amir's voice cracked. You could have died, again, for us, for people you barely know. Layla stepped forward, said something in Arabic. Amir translated. She wants to know if you remember her rabbit's name. Mara knelt down. Basil, like the herb. Layla's face lit up. She held out the rabbit. Basil missed you. I missed him too. The girl hugged the rabbit, then hugged Mara, quick and fierce. When she pulled back, she said in halting English, Thank you for saving Mama, for saving me. Mara's vision blurred. You're welcome, brave one. Amira wiped her eyes. We're moving to Virginia. I got accepted to a PhD program at UVA. Layla will start school here in the fall. We wanted you to know, in case you ever want to see us, in case you ever need anything. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything, but that's not why I'm offering. I'm offering because you're family now, whether you want to be or not. Mara stood slowly. Family. She hadn't had that in a decade. Had convinced herself she didn't need it. That isolation was safer than connection. But looking at Amira and Layla, 2 lives saved, 2 futures made possible, she felt something shift. The wall she'd built between her past and present cracked just slightly. I'd like that, Mara said quietly. Seeing you sometimes, when the world allows it. Amira smiled through tears. The world will allow it. We'll make sure. They exchanged numbers. Real ones this time, not encrypted or temporary. Made plans to meet for coffee when Amira moved to Virginia, promised to stay in touch. When they left, Mara sat in her car for 20 minutes, just breathing, processing, feeling the weight of connection settle onto shoulders that had carried isolation for too long. Her phone rang. The blocked number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Ms. Vance, we have a situation. I'm listening. American aid workers, kidnapped in Somalia. 7 people, including 2 children. The organization that took them is demanding ransom the government won't pay. They've threatened execution in 96 hours. Mara closed her eyes. And you want my consultation. We want more than consultation. We want you in country, leading the operation. No, I told you, I consult, I don't deploy. The mission parameters require someone with your specific skill set: medical training, combat experience, ability to operate in hostile territory with minimal support. There's no one else who fits the profile. Find someone. We tried. Everyone we approached said you'd be better. One of them was Ellis. He specifically recommended you lead this. Mara's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Ellis is retired. He's also right. You're the best option we have. I'm a nurse. You're Viper 1, and 7 people are going to die if you keep pretending you're not. The words hit like a hammer. Mara sat there, engine off, afternoon sun beating through the windshield, thinking about aid workers who'd gone to help people and gotten taken instead, about children counting hours in concrete cells, about the impossible math of choosing between the life you want and the life you're capable of living. What are the mission parameters? She asked. The voice on the phone outlined it. Compound in Somalia, militant group with ties to Al-Shabaab, hostages being held in deteriorating conditions, window for rescue closing as negotiations failed and executions approached. It was Syria all over again. Different country, same nightmare. I'll consult, Mara said. Review the intel, assess feasibility, but I'm not promising to deploy. Fair enough. How soon can you be in Washington? Tomorrow. We'll send transport. She hung up, sat there longer, thinking about the promise she'd made to herself, about walking away from violence, about being a nurse instead of an operator. But she also thought about Layla, about how that girl was alive because someone had been willing to go back into hell and drag her out, about the aid workers who needed the same thing, someone willing to stand between them and death. Her phone buzzed. Text from Ellis. They called you, didn't they? Mara replied, yes. What did you say? I'm consulting, not committing. That's how it always starts. Did you really recommend me? I told them the truth. You're the best person for this job. Whether you want to be or not. Mara stared at that message. Best person for the job. As if that was supposed to make the choice easier. Another text from Ellis. For what it's worth, I'll go if you go. So will Price. We don't let you walk into hell alone. Voss is still recovering. He'd come anyway if we asked, but we won't. 3 is enough. Mara thought about that. 3 operators. Against an entrenched militant group in Somalia's lawless regions, with hostages who might be injured, traumatized, unable to move quickly. The odds were terrible. The mission was dangerous. The likelihood of everyone surviving was low. But the likelihood of the hostages surviving without intervention was 0. She drove home, packed a go bag, the same one she'd used for Syria, still in her closet, still ready, combat medical supplies, tactical gear, personal items that mattered, photos of the 14 civilians from Syria, reminder of why this mattered. The transport arrived at 600, black SUV, professional driver, 3-hour drive to a facility outside Washington that didn't exist on maps. Inside, she found a team already assembled, Ellis and Price looking grim but ready, a handful of intelligence analysts. The voice from the phone turned out to be a man named Harrison, Defense Department, high enough clearance to make decisions that would never be acknowledged. Thank you for coming, Harrison said. I haven't agreed to anything. Understood. Let's review the intel. They spent 6 hours going through satellite imagery, hostage videos, intelligence reports from local assets. The situation was worse than Harrison had described. The hostages were being held in brutal conditions. One was already injured, gunshot wound to the leg, infected, deteriorating. The children were showing signs of severe trauma. How long have they been held? Mara asked. 3 weeks. Conditions have degraded significantly in the last 72 hours. Why? The militants are fracturing. Internal power struggle. Some want to negotiate. Others want to make an example. The hostages are caught in the middle. Mara studied the compound layout. Single building, minimal fortification, but surrounded by hostile territory with limited escape routes. This is a nightmare insertion, she said. We know. You're asking us to go into fractured militant territory. breach a compound with unknown internal dynamics, extract 7 hostages in various states of trauma and injury, and exfil through an area where half the population might be hostile. Yes, that's not a mission, that's a suicide request. Harrison leaned forward. Which is why we need someone who's survived the unsurvivable before. Someone who held ground in Syria when everyone said it was impossible. Someone who just pulled off a hostage rescue in Syria against similar odds. That was luck. It was skill, and we need that skill now. Mara looked at Ellis and Price. You really want to do this? Ellis shrugged. 7 people, including kids. What else are we going to do? Let them die? We might die trying to save them. Might, but definitely will if we don't try. Price nodded agreement. I'm in if you're in. Mara turned back to Harrison. I have conditions. Name them. Full operational control. No interference from command. No political considerations overriding tactical decisions. If I say abort, we abort. Agreed. Medical supplies for all hostages, pediatric equipment, assumption that at least 3 will need immediate trauma care. Done. And if this goes wrong, if we don't make it back, I want something on record. A file that explains what happened, why we went, what we were trying to do, not for glory, for the families. So they know people tried. Harrison was quiet for a moment. You're planning for failure. I'm planning for reality. This mission has about a 30% success rate. Maybe 40 if everything breaks our way. I want the 60% failure scenario documented. That's dark. That's honest. Harrison nodded slowly. I'll have the file prepared. Anything else? Yeah. When we get those people out, because I'm going to believe we can until the moment we can't, I want them to have the support they need, medical, psychological, financial, whatever it takes. No bureaucratic bullshit, no delays. Immediate, comprehensive care. You have my word. Your word against the federal government's track record. Forgive me if I need that in writing. Harrison almost smiled. You don't trust easily. I trust people to do what's in their interest. Right now, your interest is getting those hostages home. Mine is making sure they survive the aftermath. Our interests align temporarily. Let's capitalize on that. Fair enough? Harrison pulled out a tablet, typed rapidly. Here, official authorization for comprehensive post-rescue support, signed by someone high enough to make it stick. Mara reviewed it, nodded. Okay, we'll do it. Ellis exhaled. When do we leave? 18 hours. We'll stage in Djibouti. Mission window is 72 hours from now, during a shift change we've identified in the militant group's patrol schedule. The planning consumed the next 12 hours. Mara worked like she had never stopped being an operator, reviewing every detail, planning every contingency, preparing for scenarios that ranged from clean extraction to total disaster. She called the hospital, requested emergency leave. They granted it without questions. She had enough accumulated time, enough goodwill built up from covering other people's shifts. She texted Amira. Something came up. Might be out of contact for a week. Don't worry. Amira's response came immediately. You're doing it again, aren't you? Saving people who need you. Just consulting. Liar, but a noble one. Be safe. Layla and I are praying for you. Mara wanted to say she didn't believe in prayer, that divine intervention wasn't going to stop bullets or heal trauma. But sometimes people needed to feel like they could help, even from a distance. Thank you, she typed. Give Layla a hug for me. The flight to Djibouti was long. Military transport. Mara sat with Ellis and Price, going over the mission brief one more time, memorizing details, building mental maps, preparing for violence. You nervous? Ellis asked. Terrified. Good, means you're taking it seriously. I take everything seriously. It's exhausting. Price laughed. You know what the difference is between you and most operators? What? Most of us learn to compartmentalize. Put the fear in a box. You carry it with you. Use it as fuel. That sounds unhealthy. It's also effective. You don't miss details because you're too confident. You see the problems before they become catastrophic. Mara didn't know if that was a compliment or an observation. Maybe both. They landed in Djibouti at dawn. Staged at a forward operating base that officially didn't exist, met with local assets who provided real-time intelligence. The situation had deteriorated further. One hostage was critical, the children were showing signs of malnutrition, and the militant group had accelerated their execution timeline. "We have 48 hours, Harrison told them via encrypted call. "Maybe less." "Then we move tonight," Mara said. The insertion was by helicopter, low approach, minimal signature. They landed 5 kilometers from the compound, moved on foot through terrain that wanted to kill them before the militants got the chance. Mara's medical pack felt heavier with each step. She carried enough supplies to stabilize 7 people. Maybe. If none of them were critical. If they had time. If everything went perfectly. Nothing ever went perfectly. They reached the compound at 0200 local time. Guard presence was light. Most of the militants were sleeping. The ones awake looked bored, undisciplined. Mara cataloged weaknesses, poor sightlines, predictable patrol patterns, reliance on noise instead of vigilance. "Entry point?" Ellis whispered. Mara pointed to a section of wall where concrete had crumbled. "There. We breach, move to the holding area, extract hostages, exfil through the western perimeter." "What about resistance?" "Suppress and move. We're not here to fight. We're here to extract." They breached at 0217. Silent. Efficient. Inside, the compound was worse than the photos suggested. Filth. Decay. The smell of human suffering. The hostages were in a single room. 7 people. 2 children. All of them looked like they'd survived an apocalypse. One of the aid workers, a woman, maybe 40, stared at Mara with hollow eyes. "Are you real?" "We're real. We're getting you out. Can you walk?" I think so." Mara moved to the injured one, man with a leg wound that had gone septic. Fever, delirium, critical condition. "He can't walk," Mara said. "I need to stabilize him before we move." "We don't have time," Price warned. "Make time. He'll die if we don't." She worked fast. IV access. Antibiotics. Temporary splint. The man screamed when she manipulated the leg. The sound echoed through the compound like an alarm. "Contact!" Ellis yelled. Gunfire erupted, militants responding to the scream. The element of surprise was gone. Mara kept working, hands steady even as rounds impacted nearby. The man needed another 2 minutes of treatment or he'd bleed out during extraction. "Lead, we need to move," Price shouted. 30 seconds. Ellis and Price laid down suppressing fire. The children were crying. The other hostages were panicking. Everything was falling apart. Mara finished the splint. "Get him up. We're moving." They carried the injured man, herded the others toward the exit. Mara took rear guard, covering their movement. Her rifle barked. Controlled bursts, target acquisition, threat elimination. The training was automatic. Muscle memory deeper than thought. They reached the perimeter. The helicopter was incoming, early, responding to the firefight. 30 seconds to landing zone. Then one of the children stumbled, fell. Mara turned back without thinking. Scooped up the girl, maybe 6, terrified, too scared to scream. A militant appeared, raised his weapon. Mara couldn't return fire while holding the child. Ellis shot him instead. "Move!" They ran. The helicopter touched down, hostile fire intensifying. They loaded the hostages, the injured, the children. Mara was last in, still carrying the little girl. The helicopter lifted. Rounds pinged off the hull. Someone was screaming. Someone else was praying. The children were sobbing. Mara set down the girl, went immediately to the injured man. His vitals were crashing. She worked on him during the entire flight. CPR, medications, everything she had. He flatlined twice. She brought him back both times. When they landed at the base hospital, medical teams took over. Mara stepped back, covered in blood again, watching them rush the hostages into treatment. "You saved them," Harrison said, appearing beside her. "All 7. Did I? Or did I just delay the inevitable? The man with the leg wound is in surgery. They think he'll make it. The others are stable, traumatized, but alive. That's a win." Mara looked at her hands. Still shaking from adrenaline. Still covered in other people's blood. "This is who I am," she said quietly. "Not despite the violence, because of it." I save people by being willing to do the things that break other people. That's not a flaw. It's not a virtue either. It's just reality. Harrison nodded. What happens now? For you? I go home. Back to the ER. Back to saving people without rifles. Until the next call? Mara thought about that. About Layla and the aid workers and all the people who needed someone willing to walk into hell. Yeah, she said. Until the next call. 3 months later, Mara stood in a hospital conference room in Virginia. The 7 hostages had invited her, wanted to thank her in person, wanted to show her they'd survived. The man with the leg wound walked with a cane, but walked. The children were in therapy, but smiling. The others were rebuilding lives that had been shattered. You gave us a second chance, one of them said. We want you to know we're not wasting it. Mara didn't know how to respond to that, didn't know how to accept gratitude for doing things that still haunted her, but she tried. I'm glad you're here. Glad you survived. That's what matters. After they left, Amira appeared with Layla. They'd been waiting outside. You did it again, Amira said. Did what? Saved people who needed you, risked everything for strangers. They weren't strangers. They were just people in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like I was, like Layla was. Mara knelt down to Layla's level. The girl looked healthier, happier. Still carried basil everywhere, but the shadows in her eyes were fading. How are you, brave one? Better? Mama says you're a hero. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who tries. Trying is brave. Mara smiled, real and genuine. You're pretty wise for 8 years old. I learned from the angel covered in blood. Mara stood, hugged Amira, accepted the connection she'd been running from for a decade. Thank you, Amira whispered, for showing us that broken things can still protect others. Mara pulled back. You're not broken. Neither is Layla. You're surviving. That's different. So are you. Maybe. Mara wasn't sure yet, but she was learning that being Viper 1 and being Mara Vance weren't mutually exclusive, that she could hold both identities, operator and nurse, weapon and healer, the person who stood in corridors and the person who held children's hands. 6 months after Somalia, Mara sat in Iron-Tide again, not hiding, not avoiding, just having a beer after a shift. Voss limped in on a cane, recovered but scarred. He sat beside her without asking. Heard about Somalia, he said. News travels. 7 hostages, all alive, clean extraction. That's impressive. It was messy and lucky. Luck favors the prepared. They drank in comfortable silence. The bar had changed since that first night. Word had spread about Viper 1. People knew who she was now, but they also knew she wanted to be left alone unless she indicated otherwise. What happens next? Voss asked. More rescues? More operations? Maybe. When they're necessary. When children need saving and no one else can do it. And the rest of the time? I work in the ER. Save lives with medicine instead of bullets. It's enough. Most days. Voss nodded. You found balance. I found acceptance. That I'm both things, killer and healer. And that's okay. Is it? Mara thought about the hostages rebuilding their lives. About Layla learning to trust again. About all the people she'd saved by being willing to become the thing she feared. Yeah, she said. It is. She finished her beer, stood to leave. Voss caught her arm gently. For what it's worth, I'm proud to have served with you, both times. Mara met his eyes, saw respect, understanding, the bond that came from surviving hell together. Same, she said simply. Outside, the night was clear, stars visible despite the city lights. Mara walked to her car, breathing salt air, feeling the weight of everything she'd survived settle into something manageable. Her phone buzzed. Text from the blocked number. Situation developing in Yemen. Might need consultation in 72 hours. Mara looked at it, then at the hospital across the street where her next shift started in 8 hours, then at the sky where stars burned cold and bright and indifferent. She typed back, "Send me the brief, I'll review it." Not a yes, not a no. Just acknowledgement that when people needed saving, she'd be there. In whatever capacity made sense. operator or nurse or both, because that's who she'd become. Not Viper 1, not just Mara Vance, but something in between. Someone who'd learned that true strength wasn't choosing between being a weapon or being human. It was being brave enough to be both when the situation demanded it, and wise enough to know the difference. She drove home through empty streets. Tomorrow would bring new traumas, new patients, new choices between saving and losing. But tonight, she'd survived another day, helped more people than she'd hurt, made the math work out in favor of life instead of death. That was enough. It had to be. In her apartment, Mara hung up her jacket, set down her keys, looked at the photo on her wall, the 14 civilians from Syria, all grown now, all alive, all building lives that wouldn't exist without her intervention. She'd added 7 more faces to that wall. The hostages from Somalia, proof that standing in corridors and facing down nightmares could create futures. Tomorrow she'd put on scrubs and save lives in a hospital. Next week, maybe she'd put on tactical gear and save lives in a war zone. She'd decided to stop fighting what she was and start accepting it. The angel covered in blood, the operator who became a nurse, the woman who walked away from war but never stopped protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Mara turned off the lights, lay down in the dark, closed her eyes and found for the first time in years that sleep came easily. The nightmares would return, they always did, but so would the morning, and with it, another chance to save someone who needed saving. That was the job, the calling, the burden, and the privilege. And she'd carry it until she couldn't anymore. Then she'd carry it anyway, because some people are built to stand between the innocent and the darkness. Not because they want to, but because they must. And Mara had finally made peace with being one of them. True strength isn't measured by how hard you can strike, but by how many lives you're willing to stand between and destruction, even when it costs you everything.